listening to Coast to Coast AM, one of the last shows that John B. Wells did. Maybe it may have been the last show that he did for Coast to Coast before they parted ways with him, to put it nicely. Um, it's a letter that was written to the economic planning minister of Japan in 1957, Mr. Takasaki. Um, a gentleman by the name of Minoru Kawamoto had come over to the United States in 1957 and met with Dr. Weinberg, who helped build Little Boy, the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. At any rate, he came over to learn about atomic energy and to bring the information back to Japan so that they could build reactors and have power. And what came of this visit surprised Mr. Kawamoto, who is now 93 years old, and John B. Wells actually called this gentleman and had a long conversation with him because he was told by some that Mr. Kawamoto might be, a little senile maybe, or delusional, dementia, Alzheimer's kinds of issues. John B. Wells' words were, I spoke with this gentleman for quite a while, and if having dementia or Alzheimer's means being as sharp as this gentleman, then I look forward to getting it. So he posted this letter on his website, caravan-to-midnight.com. I suggest you all go there. If it's still being posted and still downloadable, you should go and download it and save it. Because God knows at some point in time this video or this recording could be scrubbed. It's a lengthy letter, so please bear with me if hopefully I pronounce all the names and any other words correctly and I don't bore you to death. Admonition of an American physicist on Japan's planning for atomic power generation. In 1957, by order of the economic planning minister, Mr. Tatsunosuke Takasaki, I flew to America with a colleague of mine on a fact-finding tour of peaceful uses of atomic energy with emphasis on atomic power generation, a subject which the government intended to commence a joint study with a panel of learned men. At that time, the general public's knowledge of atomic energy was limited and had not expanded much beyond that of the havoc of the atom bomb played at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. As to its peaceful uses, it was next to nil, and I was not an exception. At such a time, to be able to visit America's nuclear power plants and atomic laboratories and getting a broad idea of what was going on in each respectful field as seen through layman's eyes made each passing day filled with gratification and hope. Our tour came to an end with a visit to the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, located in the state of Tennessee. It turned out to be the most inspiring and memorable one of our entire visit. We were to learn that atomic energy had in itself some very basic and serious problems which were not to be slighted in attempting to harnessing it for peaceful human use. Here I wish to introduce to the reader a very precious lesson and advice given us by Dr. Elvin M. Weinberg, and then director of the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and we had the honor of being the first native Japanese he had met since the war. Dr. Weinberg told us that he had played a part in the making of Little Boy, the atom bomb dropped in Hiroshima. It was beyond his belief when he learned that Little Boy was indeed dropped on a heavily populated city of Hiroshima, and ever since it was a sin he had continued to repent, and it had taken some while for him to work up enough courage to face us this day. He went on to say that if he were to be born again as a human being, he has vowed never to become a physicist. So much had he regretted on having lent a hand in the making of Little Boy. Now is the time to fulfill his wish of directly extending to the Japanese his belated but sincere apologies. Then he extended his right hand toward us. I remember very clearly to this very day the tears of remorse in his eyes, and the both of us struggling to hold back our growing sentiment. As for me, was he not the first American to have apologized for his country dropping the atom bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? He indeed was the first and still the last American to do so. Dr. Weinberg continued, "What I find very puzzling is that Japan should have enough of the atoms after twice being baptized by the devil Adam at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But yet she has now come back asking for more, this time with interest in developing the power of the atom under the name of peaceful purposes such as nuclear power generation. Now this is what I want to say for you to take back to Japan and tell everyone. Once your hands are soiled in developing atomic energy, even for peaceful purposes, you will have opened up Pandora's box. Every conceivable problem in this entire world will begin to fall upon you, even if your efforts were in the name of peaceful purposes. Mankind, and eventually all life on earth, will be destined to perish from this earth," so he said in a very stern voice. He went on saying, "When uranium fuel is burnt in the atomic reactor, what is left is uranium ash, which still will contain noxious radioactivity of various sorts, many of which will continue to be harmful for a long period of time, toxicity of some lasting tens of thousands of years. So, a safe way of some kind must be contrived to keep this ash from contaminating us humans and other lives on this earth. Presently in America, this uranium ash is placed in drum cans and stored deep underground in wide open deserts far away from any population or sunk deep onto the ocean floor. Eventually, however, the drum containers will rust, causing the radioactive ash to leak out into the underground flow and into rivers, lakes, and the oceans. Contaminating the fish, shell, vegetation, and other forms of life, which will eventually make their way into our mouths and into the system of all other living creatures, causing irrevocable damage to all life on this earth. Such an irresponsible way of disposing spent atom fuel is not yet known to the general U.S. public. Sooner or later they will find out and create one big headache for the government. As of this moment, however, there is no other choice for disposing mountains of spent atom fuel in a somewhat safe manner. And the chances of finding a 100% safe way to protect life on this earth from the dangers of radioactivity in the future thousands of years, or even tens of thousands of years, are indeed slim. We are closed in on all sides. This indeed is a sad fate with which atomic energy development is burdened. Also, the useful life of a nuclear reactor is about 30 years. After 30 years, the reactor must be dismantled. But yet, even today, no safe way of dismantling an atomic reactor has been developed to our bewilderment. Even if a safe way had been developed, we would still be sadly faced with the difficult problem of how to safely dispose of the reactor's core and other parts, having an extremely high degree of radioactivity even after their dismantlement. As to the direct cost of nuclear power, after adding the indirect cost of disposal of both high and low-level radioactive ash, it would be extremely high even for a 100% safe power generating system. America's nuclear power generation is a byproduct of reactors built for war purposes. Also built with non-interest carrying monies, so there can be no comparison to be made with commercial nuclear power costs. Also, finding safe locations to build nuclear power plants in Japan will be an extremely difficult task. One must keep in mind that Japan has a huge population, about 50% of the U.S. Its territory is small, about 5% of the U.S. It is one of the world's foremost earthquake countries. The above are the three worst conditions for building nuclear power plants, whether in Japan or anywhere else. It is like having 3 strikes called before you even go to bat. Furthermore, one cannot say there will never be any operational mistake made. Also, an earthquake of unexpected strength could occur and damage the reactor, spilling out radioactive material with the possibility of causing much more injury and death than in any other country because of its huge and dense population. Remember, this was written in 1957. And even if there was no radioactive fallout, the inadequate control over radioactive leaks will for sure cause gradual damage, equivalent to one made instantaneously by an atom bomb. The very Japanese, who with their body and soul have twice experienced the fear of the atom, should not deal with the devil and be forced into agreeing to their so-called peaceful uses of atomic energy, and especially to their call for cheap and plentiful electric power. And don't let the scientists fool you. Japan does have the world's leading technology in the utilization of the sun's heat. It is a clean technology. It is Japan's know-how and experience in growing chlorella. Japan should increase production of chlorella and utilize it for food for humans and animals as well, and adapt this know-how to other purposes. And if you do, I feel that many rewards will be forthcoming. So went our meeting with Dr. Weinberg, whose kind words of advice on nuclear power generation, derived from his long pioneering experience on the subject and his repentance over having had a hand in the making of the nuclear bomb dropped on Hiroshima, sank deeply into our minds. We were all eyes and ears trying to catch every word he said. It goes without saying that upon return to Japan, Dr. Weinberg's wise thoughts were conveyed almost verbatim to both Prime Minister Kishi and to Minister Takasaki. The Japanese government, however, failed to take heed of Dr. Weinberg's advice, and with the recommendation of a panel of scientists and wise men, she took the devil's route and went straight to work toward building, to date, more than 65 nuclear reactors of all sorts throughout her heavily populated narrow island territory, and with more on the drafting board. It must be admitted, however, that nuclear power, devilish as it may seem, did play a major role hand in hand with the hard-working people of Japan to rebuild this war-torn nation into one of the world's major producing countries, labeled by foreigners, Japan, as number one. More than 50 years ago, when Japan chose to take the route of atomic power generation, she had completely forgotten about Pandora and her box of evils being opened at the same time. In all these years, we have forgotten about Dr. Weinberg's warnings and probably were lax in keeping our guards up against what he called all conceivable problems in the whole world from falling down upon us. And very recently it seems we have met our match. A battle has erupted between Pandora's crafty men and some of the best brains in the world for control over a batch of nuclear furnaces on the verge of meltdown at a location northeast of Tokyo. Dr. Weinberg, what are your thoughts on the merits and demerits atomic energy brought upon Japan and on the present battle underway in our country, with Pandora's evils, the outcome of which could become the third nuclear bomb experienced by Japan? There is no way for us to obtain his answers. We can only surmise that his eyes are filled with tears of compassion and pray for an early smile to come and cover his face. Mr. Kawamoto had added to this letter from 1957 on April 1st, 2011. He's now 93 years old. He still lives in Japan. And he's watching his own people die. And I can only imagine how that feels when 50-some years ago you went to your political leaders and told them that it wasn't going to be a good idea, that there were going to be dangers involved in what was about to take place in the building of these reactors. You know, in that letter it spoke of there is no good way of getting rid of this stuff, and you know, I guess they got sick of putting it in drums and dropping it in the ocean or burying it in the desert, so they started putting it inside of Patriot missiles and the like.